So lovely to see all of you. I find myself really missing you over the summer when I'm not here. So it's wonderful. It's wonderful to be here. I've been thinking about this ritual a lot and what this ritual means for us as Unitarian Universalists in a world that can feel so hard sometimes, right? It's been kind of a hard summer in a lot of ways, but when isn't it? We had Supreme Court decisions, the continuing war in Ukraine, and of course, more COVID. Between that and whatever's happening in your life, changes and transitions, it can feel hard to figure out what importance a ritual or this ritual can have in your life, in the life of this church and in this world. What does it matter? How meaningful is it to do this water communion ritual, this uniquely UU ritual? A ritual that we do at the beginning of every church year, just like we do the flower communion at the end of every church year. A ritual that's about all of our differences and all of our different beliefs. And this water communion ritual, it's actually about us coming together. It's about unity. It's about becoming one out of many things. And now, before we start the ritual, I have to tell you something. It's kind of a confession about water communion. I always forget to bring water for water communion. I've been to many, many water communions over the years at churches where I attended, at churches where I worked. And it doesn't matter if I'm the one who literally wrote the reminder to people to bring their water, I always forget. And it often involves a situation where I would run to the kitchen at whatever church I'm at right before the service and pour water into a cup. And then that would be what I would add to the communion. Meanwhile, some people would come forward and say, here's my water from when I went to Mexico or Italy or South Africa. Meanwhile, I just had my water from the building that I was in. But here's the thing that I want to say about that, because, a lot of folks here have maybe never been to a water communion before. And it doesn't matter where the water comes from. What matters is that it's your water. Even if it's only in your hands for a short time, because ultimately all of this water comes together to become our water. You see, when our world was created, there was a certain amount of water. And as the chemist Antoine Lavoisier says in his Law of Conservation of Mass about mass, which is also true about water, water is not created nor destroyed, it's transformed. So you're looking at the same molecules of water that are in the ocean and the rivers and the lakes and in our bodies. The ones that are carried up and evaporated into the clouds are the same ones that pour down into the water on the ground. They're the same ones that freeze over and the ones that become snow and ice. And they're the same ones that you get when you turn on your tap and that come out of the tap here at the church. And that's kind of interesting, right? When we live in a time when access to water is a real threat in a lot of places, particularly here in the US, poorer, blacker cities like Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi, that have no access to clean water, and lots of places around the world as well. But at the same time, we're thinking about climate change, where too much water might be melted out of the ice caps. And at the same time, if you're like me, you're looking around at your lawns, if you have them, or the ones around you, and seeing that we don't have enough water, right? That our grass isn't growing, right? The same water that cannot be created nor destroyed, it is needed for creation, and it is also a force of destruction. It is needed for life, but if you have too much, you get hurricanes and floods. So every year during this ritual, I find myself thinking about the latest disaster happening in our world that is related to water. And it feels a little funny. How are we supposed to be part of this ritual when there's a drought going on, when people don't have clean water, when the impacts of the water that transform in our climate change can be devastating? Yet here we are celebrating how this water connects all of us. So I'm struck, every year on the Sunday before water communion, we also go to Revere Beach, right? So some of us were there. We collect water in these little jars for people who can't make it to the service. And it's a way of all of us to be involved, especially those of us who forget water on Sunday morning or who don't know to bring it yet. And in these little jars, I'm always struck by how much stuff is in them, stuff that's not water, right? Sand and gunk and seaweed and salt. just like water from other places. It might have things in them like germs or lead or minerals. And we come together and we pour all of this water together, the fresh water and the salt water and the water from our bodies and from our homes, purified water and filtered water and unfiltered water, and we pour it together. And when it's together, you can't tell the difference. You can't see that some is fresh and some is not. You can't see that some of it is salty, that some of it has gunk in it, and some of it doesn't, because all of it has gunk in it. It all becomes one. So if this is supposed to be a representation of us, water with all of our differences and imperfections and power coming together to create and having the power to destroy as a church, what does that mean about us? That we have that power and we also hold those imperfections that make us beautiful and those imperfections that make us not at our best, that fill us with gunk and sometimes make us a little salty, that make us fresh and make us life-giving. This is an interesting metaphor for community, isn't it? The more I think about the drought here in Massachusetts and the fact, I just realized I don't have to wear my mask here. We've made a new policy where those of us who are at the front can speak without our masks, and I'm not really quite used to it yet. The more I think about the drought here and the fact that water is needed in so many places, despite the fact that there is enough resources in our world for everyone to have enough clean drinking water, I think a bit about the spiritual drought, the drought of community, and how many of us thirst without knowing it for a place that will accept us with our imperfections, a place that will hold us with all of our gunk and saltiness, that will help us be life-giving and stop us from destroying, a place where we can be together a blessing for this world, where we can use our gifts to become something greater, where we can, like water, be transformed, a place where we hold each other up and where we support each other. We become something far greater than we could be as just one jar. And, some say that the pandemic caused a lot of folks to not have this community, but I don't think that's true. I think there's been a slide away from this kind of spiritual community for a while. And it's been for a lot of reasons. It's been because we prioritize being productive, or because it's kind of countercultural to sit in pews like this, or maybe it's because we don't have childcare that makes it possible for people to attend, or because we're exhausted and burnt out. And going to church can feel like going to the gym sometime, flexing those spiritual muscles. It's not easy all the time, right? It's not easy thinking about how we can live our lives and how we can help create this heaven on earth. It's hard. Holding yourselves accountable is hard. Holding each other accountable is hard. Taking risks for justice is hard. And doing that in community can be even harder sometimes. But it's also about our obsession with individualism in this society. Ultimately, what this ritual teaches us is that we're not individuals, that we need other people, that we don't survive well on our own, that we need other people to be there when our children are born and when we die, people who will cry with us when the world seems like too much and challenge us to live our values more fully. And we very much believe that you can believe a lot of different things and be your individual self. But despite all of this, we are still a collective people. And we have to harness this idea with all of its power to create and destroy and to transform, because water isn't transformed on its own. It's transformed through relationship with other water and things. Like the water, you can't come here expecting to leave the same way you came in. We will get each other's stuff. We will sometimes get gunk on each other. We'll get a little salty, but we'll also be beautiful. So if there's anything that this ritual teaches us when we are in such need of this collectivist idea, is that we too can sustain life. We too need to remind each other how not to destroy. And we too can transform each other and our world. Is that we need more places where we can practice caring for each other and hearing and listening to each other and being transformed by each other, so that we in turn can transform our world. So we're going to have a short moment for music before we move into our water communion. And I want to invite you, for those of you who maybe you haven't been to church for a water communion before, or maybe you forgot to bring water like me, we do have some water at the front, but I also left a bunch of these little jars by the kitchen. So if you want to run out during some of our music and grab some water, you are welcome to do that as well. And one of the ushers can point you in the way, because community is about our imperfections and holding each other up. So I'll invite our music to start.
So I'd like to invite the members of choir who came this morning to come share a bit of music with me. It's really such a joy to introduce to you some of the singers in this community. I also realized that I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning of the service. If we have met before, if we have not met, my name is Soren. I'm the music director here. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. I now also have a name tag, which is very helpful for remembering these things. And if you happen to know this song, or if you pick it up along the way and would like to join in, please join us as the Spirit moves. I think that I put some of these lyrics up on the slideshow, even though you can't find them in your order of service. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. There are more mountains falling, they will find their way to me. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters, when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will walk through the fires, when they find their way to me. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, when they find their way to me. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more fires rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know.
I love that. So we've come to our moment when we're going to collect the water for our water communion. You also should have received a little note card when you arrived this morning. And if you did not receive a note card, you can come get one from the front. And if you didn't get a chance to collect water or bring some, we also have some at the front from our service last week. So what's going to happen is I'm going to invite folks forward to pour their water into our water communion, water of blessing. And if you are moved, this is an optional piece. If you'd like to write down a word or two about what this water means to you, we're going to collect those waters and weave them into a blessing for the water. So those of you who are at home, I invite you to also make sure you have a cup of water with you. And you can also type a word or two into the chat. And we'll have a moment of some music as we can all come forward and pour our water and share a word if you so choose. You are now invited to come forward. Let's take a moment now, and if you're at home, hold that water in your hands, and if you're here, just have a spirit of openness towards the water. This water is the water that we will use for rituals throughout the year when we have child dedications, which are like baptisms, but they are for our Unitarian Universalist faith. This is the water that we will use. So we want to imbue it with all of the words and love and changes and transformations of this community. So if you'll join me in a moment of blessing. May this water that represents stillness and oneness remind us of the importance of coming back together as a church. May this water remind us of the ways in which we are family, in which we are here with our chosen family and those who are part of our birth families. May we be reminded of the memories that this water carries, of being with our friends, of walking near our homes, of the growth that has happened to us, of the times that we have spent with those that we love. May this water remind us of the things we like to do, the adventures that we take together, the hobbies that we have, the gardening that we do. May it remind us to have a sense of humor. May it remind us to treasure those who are no longer with us. This water is a representation of being held here in community. And may this water continue to represent that as we together transform and are transformed with each other. Let us be grateful for what the water brings to our life. And let us say together, Amen. Amen. As we move into our offering this month, we're going to share our offering with